So for this workflow, I'll export this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Revit now. So started off in FormIt, laid out my basic geometry. And what I'd like to do is to continue that path. I want to keep working on it without losing anything. And one of the things I can do is take advantage of that FormIt add-in that allows me to do a lot of work. This allows me to convert Revit files into FormIt geometry, so I can use those as sort of blocks or groups. Same thing for converting SketchUp. And I can also import that FormIt into Revit, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. So bring that file in. So this is one that I was working on before. This object here, because it was actually told what it should be, it understands itself as a generic family. So I can then select it and turn that into any other generic model family that I've actually created, which in this case is just a bit more detailed. So I can start off with basic elements there, bring them in here, and use them as a placeholder to continue to go further. And because work doesn't stop, what I can end up doing is if somebody is still editing in FormIt, so I've brought in their design iteration here, I need to start putting together sheets. I need to start getting information ready for presentations. But that doesn't mean that they've stopped designing. All I need to do is bring in, essentially loaded as a family, their work from whenever they are ready for another iteration, and that'll update this just as if it would any other family. Load into project, tell it which one I want to load it into, and then say yes when it asks me if I want to overwrite it. And that way I can continue to modify this. And like any kind of a wall or element that is done face-based, if that face actually updates, basic example, I just grab the elements that are based to it, say update to face, and they'll realign to it. So if I am using that mass form to split my floors, my walls, and other elements from, I can continue to iterate in both tools and maintain an intelligent workflow where I'm not losing time or data. Okay. So picking up from there, take a couple of steps forward. So another data set that most people have probably seen. Now from here, let's say I started working in here. I had the early on insight from 360, and now I want to do the exact same thing. So inside of Revit, I would go to Analyze and Generate Insight. It does the exact same thing. It uploads it to the cloud. Because I'm actually building this off of the model now, I've got a lot more detail. I've got a lot more information in here. And sometimes to make it easier to understand, I might use the Explode tool, just so I can actually see how it's broken up the model. But from within here, it's the same workflow. Once you understand how Insight works, I can continue to go to it from both Revit and FormIt and work my way through the process. It's consistent, it's simple, streamlined, and it's actually very user-friendly. And I can invite other people to work with this and go on this. So if you have a person who is very versed in Revit, great modeler, but the people who are doing a lot of the energy analysis or who are leading that approach aren't so hot in Revit, that's not a problem. I can actually come out here, view the different projects that are created on Insight, and I can actually share this with others. I can export this out if I need to. So if somebody was using something where they need a DOE2 file or a GBXML, I can do that. And you notice that I have a report to AIA for the 2030 challenge. Once I'm set up for that, I can work with that. Now, Insight is one of sort of the basic tools for an energy analysis. When I say basic, I don't mean it's simple. I mean it's one of the easy ones that people are going to probably go to first. But there's actually a lot of other kinds of an analysis. So I'm going to hop back into Revit again. So one of the ones I can look at would be a lighting analysis. So if I look at the ribbon here, you've got Generate Insight, Heating and Cooling with Energy Plus. So if I actually have created spaces instead of just rooms, I can do that. But I also have lighting. If I decide to do lighting, what's going to end up happening is it's going to give me a couple of little pop-ups and let me know what's going on. You know, you have to do this, you have to do that. But the result is, this will actually go through all the information I need for my lead, sorry, for my lead energy EQC7 for option 2. So this will actually run through, look at all of the daylighting. It'll actually graphically show me that on the different floor plans, and then I can utilize this for my presentations and for my paperwork. So I can look at this and modify what the results are for how much I want to have, how much I want that to go up, what graphic style I'd like to actually be using. So if you don't like that style, you can always tweak this. Do I want to show points? Do I want to actually show the grid lines? So this is something that you can modify. It doesn't have to be just like this. But it's a very easy way for me to generate lighting analysis results for different levels and for different processes. Now, outside of the typical analysis that you might see, again, we have our solar, our lighting, our heating and cooling. One of the other kinds of analysis that we can take advantage of is something that's more of a visual standpoint. So I've just switched over to a different Revit file. And what I'm looking at here is a Dynamo script running based off of this little person. Now, in a lot of the cases, again, for energy or for lead, right to light or access to glazing or windows is one of the things that tends to be important. What this is doing is it's locking onto that person. And because the Dynamo script is set to be automatic, I'll actually show you what it looks like right here. As I move this around, that will update. You can see it actually updating inside of Dynamo as well. Okay, so I'm not using Dynamo here from a modeling standpoint. I'm not even using it from a model management standpoint. I'm using it here from a graphical analysis. And what it's actually doing, it is graphing points, splaying out at whatever instance I ask for, to all the glazing and the objects in the room. And then from here, if I wanted to take this further, I can color code it. So I can graphically see a difference between rays that hit the glazing versus a different object. And I can also try to schedule that as well. But just another instance of me running an analysis of a model of different spaces based on different rules. And in this case, I'm using Dynamo to speed that process up and to automate that process. Now, if I look at Dynamo from a more traditional use case, so I'm going to switch back over here again. So over here I have a roof. And let's say I'm still playing around with how that roof is going to be set up. What I have are sliders. So basic sliders that say, okay, well, what if I want this to be 6 by 8? This one is not being told to run. Something had to go wrong in the demo, right? There we go. So in this case, what it's actually going to do is it's going to give me those different panels for that roof. There we go. And the benefit of this is that I can very quickly run through different iterations if I want to modify what the colors are, what the size of it is. I just come there and modify that, and that can give me those different iterations. So this is typically what most people think of when they hear of Dynamo the first time, that it's something that's used for modeling. But again, I just used it for more of an analysis tool. I can use it to manage my sheets as well. It just depends on what it is I'm trying to script or to streamline the process of. So again, Dynamo's tying into Revit. I can modify this, keep it as simple as I'd like, or as complex as I'd like. Some of these get pretty fun. Now, in this case, I've just taken my Revit model. I've gone through the different kinds of analysis. I'm kind of happy with the way that things look for the roof now. But I'd like to get an idea of, okay, is this actually in budget? Okay, so I'll take my Revit file. And I'm now going to bring this into Navisworks. So here's my Revit file. Here's my funky roof. And I'm going to bring up my quantification workbook. Now, what I've actually done already is I've just set up the workbook to have the different grouping in terms of, okay, I've got my shell, my substructure, my exterior structure, and I've got my panels here. And I've created a search set for my roof panels. I'm just going to grab that there and put it on that. That runs through and tells me that I currently have 81 panels. Now, I could have done that in Revit. No big deal on that. I could have always just said, okay, I want to do a schedule of panels, and I want you to filter to only show me these and give me a count. Where things really get powerful and flexible inside of Navisworks, though, is that I also created an element here called panel brackets. What panel brackets are doing is it's telling me that for every panel that I have, I want to make sure that I have one bracket at each corner. So it's doing all the multiplication for me as based on the physical objects. So I can count things that aren't just the objects in the model. In this case, what I'm doing, if I zoom in down there, is I'm looking at the count of the panel, and I'm multiplying it by 4. Pretty basic, nothing crazy there. But this is the exact same process I might do if I'm looking at, okay, well, I need to have a certain percentage of excess for this based on waste, damage, loss. Or if I have a wall, I'd like to get an idea of what it's going to cost per linear foot or per adding all this other stuff into it, whether it's my studs, my screws, my hangers. So I can add in as many different items or resource elements and then combine them with physical geometry from the model. Now, everything I'm doing here is focused on BIM, so I'm not going to go into the 2D analysis aspect, but I can also tie these into elements that I'm taking off of, say, a PDF if I wanted to. This is coming off of the Revit model. So if the model gets updated, I refresh my Revit model, and then I can come over here and tell it that I both want to update it, or I'd like to analyze the changes between versions or iterations of that model. So what I've essentially done is I've brought my Revit model into Navisworks, told it to quantify elements that I've built, and then give me quantities of elements that would be based on those. And then I can continually update this and refer to this as I iterate through my design. So I can make sure that I'm on point and I don't suddenly go beyond what my costs should be. And then the other thing I mentioned before is the 4D timeline. As a really, really quick one, I'm just going to come through here and say that I'd like to auto-add tasks for every topmost item. And if I tell it to simulate, it's basically going to simulate based off of the different floors or levels or elements. Now, in a real project, you'd be much more articulate than which ones, than the things that you're looking at here. But as an example of just how quickly I can assign elements to it and watch it animate through the different time, you can see the date, how many weeks the project is. It's very easy to work with. It's very easy to configure. I can color code things the way that I want. And if you are taking advantage of something like a Primavera or a Microsoft project, or even just an Excel spreadsheet, I can bring that in here and use that for my scheduling.